Good morning. This is too loud. You can turn it down. Yeah, I'll move it down. All right. Give me just a second to keep this going. There we go. That running slow this morning. Get in your Bibles, turn to 1 Timothy chapter 5. I'm almost there. Sorry. See if my computer catches up to my. 1 Timothy chapter 5, good morning. It's good to see the handful that are able to get out, and I know we have several that are still on the road to travel, and we do want to make sure that give y'all time to get on. We are in our 10th session. And my iPad is not going to participate. Give me just 1 second. There we go. Timothy 5, we have had basically our studies here at the church building 3 in a row now. This will be 3 in a row on that particular topic, or on this chapter. All right, now let's try again. Good morning, good morning. So let me get my Bible operation open. So, 1 Timothy chapter 5. Do not rebuke an older man, but exhort him as a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters, with all purity. Honor widows who are really widows. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them learn to show piety at home and to repay their parents, for this is good and acceptable before God. Now, she who is really a widow and left alone trusts in God and continues in supplications and prayers day and night. But she who is really a widow and left alone trusts in God and continues in supplications and prayers day and night. That's a real widow. But she who lives in pleasure is dead while she lives, and these things command that they may be blameless. But if anyone does not provide for his own, especially those of his own household, he's denied the faith and has become worse than an unbeliever. We'll be in 2 Peter chapter 2 and know the darkness of the depravity of unbelievers. And he's saying in this context, worse than unbelievers. And what we're talking about is relationships. Through our reading of 1 Timothy, we have learned about the purpose of the commandment is to have this purity of heart, to have a clear conscience and sincere faith. We have come to chapter 2. We realize that it's God's desire that all men be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. We come to chapter 3 and we learn the organization of the church, which is the body of Christ, or the family of God. So you have now kind of the structure that's been born because the church exists. And chapter 5 now brings in the evangelists' relationships as governed by God. And so we can know how that the roles should interact. And it will help us also to learn that the pastoral arrangement is so foreign from Scripture. The evangelist has a very unique and incredibly wonderful job. I've been there and lived it. it's also incredibly difficult. I mean, and there's a lot of sadness that's brought to you because of the great hope that you have, that everything would always work out. But the relationships of an evangelist is governed by God is don't rebuke an older man. So he's showing how that we begin to learn respect, interaction. Younger men as brothers, we become this relationship. Older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters. And then he puts within that clause, with all purity. I do remember when I started preaching that, there was the rule. You never, ever, never have a closed door meeting with someone of the opposite sex. You never have a locked door, you never have a private meeting, you never have any kind of meeting like that. If it was necessary, she would either come or be made aware, so that we always had that type of clarity. And this, I think, is the initial thing that he's showing, is not rebuke an older man, but exhort as a father. That's not like hollering over the aisle at him, but talking to him as an encourager. Older women as mothers, we know what kind of relationship that is. So we're talking just about relationships. And up to this point, Paul has been giving instruction on matters that touch Timothy's relationship with the whole congregation. Almost the whole of the remainder of the letter is concerned with specific direction to Timothy to assist him in dealing with various groups and individuals within the congregation. And this comes where I'll have a point that's actually in our reading already about charging the church. But Timothy, as an evangelist, was to go be very deliberate. Exhort his fathers, as brothers, as mothers, as sisters, with all purity. There's various interactions and distinctive responsibilities. To not rebuke the older man. And when it says do not rebuke, it literally means to strike with blows, is the literal term. Attitude. What you're trying to do. What are you trying to inflict? When you say that I am going to rebuke, and it is in that type of language, what are you trying to do? You're trying to punch. You're trying to punch something out of them that may be that they need encouragement in. And this is why he's showing a distinction in human beings and age and how to react properly. As a young man with another young man, you may be able to exchange in the rebuking in a proper way. Here, Timothy, even as the appointed, they laid their hands upon him, he's to go over there, and he said, no, don't go in there and rebuke an older man. So, you see the complexity of what Timothy's been given? What did we learn in chapter 4? The Spirit expressly says that what's going to happen? There are going to be false, deceiving people. He has to be discerning. He has to know what to respond to and how to respond to it. And so, chapter 4, you have this elevated sense. We're all nervous, because we have the Spirit expressly saying that there's deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. And now, you talk to me as an older man. That's your rule. And it's true. And a younger man, and especially sitting where a younger person is, he may have some advice for an older guy. What's going on today or how things are perceived. And it can help. And there's been many occasions where I've sat in with younger guys, guys I've baptized, and they would talk to me about how they received things or how things sounded, that sort of thing. And that's what he's talking about. The approach. He's talking about how we approach situations. The older man, the New King James, the elder, it says, refers to an elder in respect to age, if you're looking at the King or the New King James, not one who's holding the office of an elder. At the end of chapter 5 and verse 17, we get to that part. Okay? But when he's saying elder there, do not rebuke an older man, he's not talking about an elder of the church in that text. And it demonstrates the importance of respecting age, And this is throughout all of the Bible, is that we give the respect to age, and I appreciate that. The older I get, right, Fred? So we got to respect the forehead. So there you go. Younger men as brothers, Timothy is to avoid all self-exaltation over his position. This is the thing that he's saying. Exhort his brothers. As brothers, like not I'm coming in and I'm going to tell you like it is because I'm the evangelist and you're something else. We are brothers. We are brothers together. And older women as mothers, Timothy must deal with each older woman as he would his mother were erring. I mean, it's so these are in the context of having to do ministry. And ministry includes, the declaration of truth in the face of error. And we should not get upset, or we should not be surprised when we have to have a discussion about a thing like that. And what I've been encouraged by lately with some of the discussions we've been having with other congregations that we've been separated from is just the desire to have dialogue. And maybe we could get dialogue so that we could find the path that leads to what Jesus prayed. With all purity, as I said, with the open doors. And for every young evangelist, it doesn't matter the age, make that an absolute in every term. Always. Always. Church family. In Mark 10, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, no one has left brothers or sisters or mothers or fathers or lands or fields for my sake and the gospel will fail to, and for the gospel will fail to receive 100-fold in the present age, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and fields, along with persecution, and in the age to come, eternal life." This is Jesus describing our family. This is Jesus describing the tragedy that happens in so many families. Our families, our paternal, maternal families, our brothers, our sisters, people that are blood kin, oftentimes turn away and do not want to be a part of the church family. And that puts an incredibly difficult circumstance within the familial aspect. They still exist. And these principles of communication that Paul is saying must be maintained without controversy, without compromise, obviously. But we're engaging in incredibly difficult warfare against false teaching, chapter 4. We're engaging in this war, while this is happening, unending relationships are being formed. The last 3 and 4 years, some of the struggles that we have been through individually, personally, to collectively, the physical strain and the infirmity and the suffering, all of these things in the face of all the evil and all the difficulties that were going on in the world and continue to do. While that's happening, here we are building eternal relationships. Had a text I had to send to the Grays yesterday. It was from 8 years ago. It was just a complimentary text about love and family, and texted it back. I sent it back 8 years later. And she said, "Well, that ain't changed, that's more." And lots happened in 8 years. A lot of wonderful things, a lot of hard things. But that is how we function together. And the truth will. Younger are to treat older as fathers, older women as mothers, younger women as brothers, younger women as sisters, younger men as brothers. It would stand to reason then in that older men are also to treat younger men as brothers, older women as sisters, younger men as sons, and younger women as daughters. If you look at what he's telling him to do here, then the younger and the older should be here. And so now we just have a familial or a family relationship. Hey, honoring widows and elders. This is to honor. Honor widows who are really widows. We're going to see in verse 17 that elders who rule well are counted worthy of double honor. So we have the word honor being used here. And honor widows who are really widows. Anybody got a guess on what that's talking about? Don preached on it not too long ago when he was talking about preachers being paid or elders being paid. What is the honor here being made reference to?
Taking care of their physical needs.
There you go. The honor is to meet the physical needs. And to revere, to venerate, to be in the context, it includes not only respect, but financial support. God has equally stressed care for widows in the Old Testament as well. And financial support is not to be thought of as charity or handout. See, this is, here's where Paul is, in this chapter, Paul is teaching us a family, the function of the family, the organization of the family, and the financing of the family. I mean, all of these things exist, and I think we have them out of order, and I think that 1 Timothy 5 shows us we're a little out of order. Now, the reason for that is because there's been a lot of changes to caring for widows. What happens to widows today? Anybody know? What happens to a widow today? Husband passes away. What usually happens? What should happen? Text. Children care for mama, grandma. The financial burden that the church might be under is taken care of by the children. But what in a situation where you have a woman who is in the church, has been serving the church in whatever capacity, maybe she was an elder's wife and the elder passed away, and they didn't have means. I know we have Social Security today, but what if she had extenuating circumstances? Should we give her a gift of charity? Should we be charitable? Is that how Timothy is using this language? Is it it'd be nice and let's just give her what she, no. And it even uses the terminology to be taken into the number. Know what that means? The taken into the number, do you know what that means? See, I've been taken into the number to be supported.
To be taken under the care of the church.
That's right. Right now, my necessities, if it weren't for the church, would not be met. Okay? And so that's what we usually think about widows in loneliness. It's the contrast between a widow who has family and one who's completely alone. Most of the widows I've encountered have family. And I've spent 9 years at the Good Shepherd now. 2 churches for a while, and now we're down to 1. Each incident, almost all had family. None of them were there to worship with them on Sunday. Well, I'll take that back. A couple. And when you look at the needs that are to be met in this context and the language that is used and the division that was about to occur in Acts the 6th chapter because of the neglect of the widows, I wonder how much separation we've done. Because when I started going to the Good Shepherd or going to a retirement community to preach, you know why? Because Billy contacted me, she wasn't able to get out, and she, part of a congregation that had plenty of access to transportation and all, but nobody was checking. She had a son, but he wasn't able to help and didn't really extend the help. That's where we started the church, at the Good Shepherd. And come to find out, there were about 13 other people that felt the same way. They wanted to worship, but no, it wasn't, that would have been too much trouble. You know how much trouble it would be to go get in your car and go to pick up somebody and bring them in here to church and take them back home. This is your day, you know, this is your day off. Except for the preacher. I'm saying these things so it prompts us. You know, we've lost some people during the pandemic. I know that we could have, should have, would have done better had we known better. But we still have to try to work. Timothy is to see it as such that widows were cared for. And when you consider true, pure, and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to keep oneself unspotted from the world, the midst of that, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. That's the word. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them relieve them. That means that they, anybody that came off their offspring, wherever it is, children, grandchildren, male, female, it doesn't matter in the descent. Let them first show piety at home to repay their parents. Being disrespectful to parents is not pleasing to God, and the text says worse than an unbeliever. Worse than an unbeliever. This is good and acceptable. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I guess kind of related to this, but in Acts 6, where the Hellenist widows were complaining of the neglect of daily distribution, are we to assume that these were widows that were widows indeed, or that the 7 men of honest report, acting as deacons, I guess, were maybe gathering food from others and helping them?
Designating. So the question was, in Acts the 6th chapter, when the widows were being neglected, were they all widows indeed? You know, which that would be highly unlikely according to 1 Timothy. So that brings up a point of how to cover the need and the way that they covered the need. But Timothy is more to, like you said, we get the organized church together now. We get this collected. This is in the beginning. And you see at the very beginning in Acts, this was a concern. And it was dealt with, and that's how we got deacons. Then we come to Timothy. We have a church. We have the how to structure it. And now we're saying, take care of these widows. Now, how the men that received that spirit and went and dispersed that food at that time, it was making sure that, you know, the men that might be able to go out and hustle to get some food, these women that could not had to make sure their needs were met. And that was what the deacons or the men that were appointed there in Acts the 6th chapter were to do. And that was also helps us understand, somebody comes in, you got a special need, you look at it, and you make a decision. It may be that they're not a widow indeed, it's a widow in a circumstance, or a lady in a circumstance that's not a widow at all. So this isn't talking about every act of benevolence, this is talking about the incorporation within the church and the responsibility within the church. Many times somebody may come in and say they've been traveling and they're in need of financial assistance, and that's not the work of the church to go just meet that, because we're really prioritized. We're really widows. We need to be prepared for the things that we should really look into, and we might, depending on the nature of the circumstance, help those that are saints. Most often, in circumstances like that come up, we gather together and meet the need. But Paul said, take the collection so there's no need when I come, meaning that there would be some funds there that if a need arose, particularly in this case with a widow, that it would be met. And so those are the things that we have to give consideration to. Of course, we are able to walk away from all that because there's no such thing as a widow indeed anymore. You know how we work on it, and that's not true.
Well, then sometimes, we may see someone come in to our assembly that we don't know. They say they're Christians, and their car broke down or
Yep.
whatever, and members of the congregation would just pull money out of their pockets
Yep.
and help them.
That way to avoid the violation of utilizing funds in an inappropriate way, because you don't know. And there's always that, there's local church autonomy where you have to use the best decisions that you can make. I remember, being the preacher there in Jacksonville, and I would get the calls at the church building, and I would get calls from time to time. I'm passing through, I need $40 to get gas to go so-and-so to get further down the road, and I'd have the story, and then I would say, well, I'll tell you what, I'll meet you at the gas station, we'll put the gas in the car, I'll do it for you, and then they would hang up. But I had a lady call one time, says, my child come home and she's got a stomach bug. And the doctor said she just needs some Sprite and crackers, and I don't get my check until the first of the month. I said, what's your address? I go to Kroger, I get Sprite and crackers and a little Pepto-Bismol and drop it off. That's how, those are the things that when you know, you do. And I didn't have to call the church to go figure that out. That was things that we could meet on our own. And I could meet on my own. So that's the point in understanding the relationships. We're to show respect to one another. You see each other as family. Love and respect must be demonstrated in all decisions that we make when taking one into the number or refusing to do so. And to my knowledge, I have been a part of a couple of occasions where someone needed help for a period of time. It wasn't a permanent thing, but they were taken into the number for a short period of time to get them through a crisis. And these are the kind of things that judgments are made, but these are the principles by which they are made in 1 Timothy chapter 5. Young are to show respect to their elders, and that they would their own parents. They should view those of their own age as brothers and sisters. And this is an important concern. The church at Jerusalem, we just brought all these up, the care for widows, the pure and undefiled religion, and yet it was not the responsibility simply to be thrust upon the church. The local church has limitations. You cannot do anything you want with the church budget. That's it. Let me sing the song again, because it does come in glaring in this text, and I want to just use this for the few minutes that we have, because this is the text that I go to. And we've been through 1 Timothy chapter 5, and we got to verse 8. Verse 7, these things command that they be blameless, and that is to take care of the situation. Take care of the responsibilities that you are personally responsible for. He just said that. Don't go to the church and get the church to pay for something that you need to take care of yourself. If anyone has not provided for his own, especially those of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. If she is in this destitute situation because of the neglect of her family, then he's pointing to the family and saying, that's worse than an unbeliever. An unbeliever would take care of their own. An unbeliever would take care of his mama. So he's saying, let's see if I get to this text. Then I'll go back. Do not let a widow under 60 years old be taken into the number, and not unless she has been the husband of one wife, well reported of a good work, if she's brought up children, if she has lodged strangers, if she has washed the saints' feet, if she has relieved the afflicted, if she has diligently followed every good work. But refuse, there you go, refuse younger widows. For when they have begun to grow wanton against Christ, they desire to marry, having condemnation, because they have cast out their first faith. Now, a lady that wants to devote her life to Christ but is not in that qualification yet, doesn't mean she can't devote her life to Christ. She just needs to do that and make a tent. She needs to work.
Where you just worded me. The husband of one, the wife of whatever it said, the wife of one man.
Right.
What? I don't know what Greek words are or anything. What does that mean?
One woman man, one woman woman, one man woman. The wife of one man, and I believe that is that she has not been wantonness in her life. And I would have to look that up to know if that would, obviously it's at the time, you know, the polygamy didn't go the other direction. So that would be what I would envision in that. 60 years old, not unless she has been the wife of one man. In other words, she's not had 3 different husbands, 3 different families, and this sort of thing. To that degree, I'd have to sit down with you and we'd have to look. But as we said, I don't know how much of this, the wife of one man, he's dead. If there was an ex-husband sitting around, I'm not sure what the context of that. I'd have to do a little work. But it is definitely referring to just the fact that she's had one husband. And that's what the text says. Well reported of a good work, brought up children, lodged strangers. It looks like a singular, identifiable life. That's what I see. The younger may desire to marry, and then there would be a switch in their focus.
Now, the younger widows, I guess from my discussion before, would be the ones that if they didn't have a means of support, that individual church members would have to take over.
There's times that they would take over. Yeah, they wouldn't
be
taken into the number and or whatever the circumstance is. Because as this family, love as brothers, love as sisters, you don't have to get to that point. You know, they're in your house. They're having their needs met. And that's oftentimes what we do see even within the church as well. And what we should see. Did I finish that? Desire younger widows to marry, bear children, manage the house, give opportunity for the adversary. So this is the framework. This is the picture of what the church and the family, bear children, manage the house. So there you go. You're talking about the role of women in the church and all that. The woman's got the role of basically, she's taking charge of the household affairs. I mean, it's not that the husband is not the head of the wife at all, but you see her role. Give no opportunity to the adversary to speak reproachfully, for some have already turned aside after Satan. So he's speaking from experience, from example, how you see it, how it has happened before. If a believing man or woman has widows, so what he's saying right here, the believing man has widows, or woman has widows, let them relieve them, and do not let the church be burdened that it may relieve those that are really widows. It's making it a hard decision. There are business meetings, or there is a financial decision that is made that says no. Refuse. There is a decision that is made in our lives to refuse to let the church pay for the things that I'm personally responsible for. That leads me to this. The part of the church, the entertainment, the banquet room, the multi-purpose kitchen, the serving refreshments, the building coffee shops, the family life center, the basketball court, the school for secular education. All of these things, are these part of the work of the church? The ministry, like the sports ministry they have, is providing a ministry, recreational sports, that create an environment to be conducive to becoming fully devoted followers of Christ by worshiping the Lord. That'll be related to my wells without water lesson. What did I just say? Let's go play ball by worshiping the Lord. Like I said, some of the language just seems to be so far out there. It is good for Christians to get together socially, recreationally. We need to do it more, and we need to come up with ways to do that. Now, there's methods that people have come up with, and you just charge the church. You just take it out of the budget and let the church pay for it. But how can we the saints for the work of the church ministry is not revenue resource. I know big church across the street tried to use that to make some money. We must refuse to divert the energy, the strength, and the resources of the church to serve social and recreational purposes. This I know, because that is to be reserved for those things that are more important. Directly stated, do not let the church be burdened, charged, or pay for the needs of a familial widow. If I cannot allow the church to pay for the needs of my familial indigent widow, if I cannot do that, if it's directly stated, then how can I allow the church to do that? Church cannot pay for the needs of my familial widow, but it can sponsor the softball team, can build a coffee shop in the cafe, and build a place to play basketball. 1 Timothy chapter 5. A casual read will help you. There are responsibilities to be met by the church, but don't let the church be burdened. It may relieve those who are really widows. We must prioritize. Next Sunday, we'll pick up right there with the elders. The relationship, we'll finish out in 1 Peter. Just lay your markers or note. 1 Peter 5:17, let the elders who rule well. We'll pick up right there and then go to the honor of the masters. You've got honor to widows, honor to certain elders, and then honor to masters. And we're going to kind of look at how that looks like in the face of a Christian living where the Spirit expressly says that the time will come and there will be deceiving spirits, and how we operate within that. We're going to break now. We'll be back at 10:30.